A rude waiter mocks a quietly dressed man, assuming he's just another broke customer who doesn't belong in a luxury restaurant. But when the manager rushes over and reveals the nobody is actually Keanu Reeves, the secret owner of the place, the waiter learns a brutal lesson about respect and humility. I still remember the night our most arrogant waiter insulted a man in a faded black hoodie and changed all of our lives. If I close my eyes, I can still see the way that stranger smiled, even while being pushed aside like he didn't belong in the world he was quietly paying for. It was a Thursday, the kind of night that crawls under your skin when you've been on your feet for 10 hours. The chandeliers at Sable and Stone threw this soft golden glow over crystal glasses and polished cutlery, like the whole place was trying to convince the rich people inside that life was always this perfect. I was weaving between tables with a tray full of empty plates, my feet numb, my hair frizzing out of my bun, when the doors opened and he walked in. Alone, no entourage, no flash. Just a man in a worn hoodie, dark jeans, and boots that had clearly lived a real life. "Great," Dylan muttered beside me, balancing 2 martinis with the confidence of someone who believed the world owed him a spotlight. "Another walk-in who thinks this is a burger joint." Dylan was our star waiter, the one who handled celebrities and billionaires, the one management loved because he knew how to flatter a black card into tipping 20%. Tonight he wore a slim black vest and a smile that was all teeth and no soul. He'd been in a mood since his rich regular had canceled a big reservation. When the money didn't show up, his patience disappeared with it. The man in the hoodie paused just inside the doorway, taking in the restaurant like he'd been here before, like he was measuring it against a memory. His hair was longer than in the movies, loosely tied back, a few strands falling into his face. He pushed them away, and for a second I felt this weird jolt of recognition I couldn't place. I knew that profile, I knew that jawline, but my brain was too tired to connect the dots. "Hostess is on break, seriously," Dylan hissed as the man took another hesitant step forward. "Watch this, guy's lost." Before I could say anything, Dylan swept past me like he was stepping onto a stage. His friendly customer smile vanished the second his back turned to the dining room. By the time he reached the stranger, his voice had that edge I'd learned to recognize, the one he saved for people he'd already decided weren't worth his time. "Sir," Dylan said, blocking the man's path with his tray, "this is a private dining space. Reservations only. Dress code is on the website." The man blinked, a little surprised but not offended. His eyes were calm, almost too calm, like someone who's been through much worse than one rude waiter in an expensive restaurant. "Oh, I'm sorry," he said, voice quiet but warm. "I was told I could just come by. I didn't make a reservation." "Yeah, I can see that," Dylan replied, looking him up and down like he was something stuck to the bottom of a shoe. "We're fully booked. You can try somewhere." "We're not fully booked," I cut in before I could stop myself. "Table 12 canceled, remember, we." Dylan shot me a glare so sharp it felt like a slap. "Maria, I've got this." The stranger glanced at me and gave a small, grateful smile, like he'd just cataloged the fact that at least one person in the room saw him as human. Up close, his face finally clicked in my mind. The tired eyes, the familiar lines around his mouth. I'd seen that face jumping off buildings and dodging bullets in movies I'd watched on a tiny second-hand TV with my little brother. My heart started hammering in my chest. "No way," I thought. "That can't be him, not dressed like that, not here." But the more I stared, the more impossible it was to unsee. "So, like I said," Dylan continued, leaning on one hip, "we don't have anything available for walk-ins. There's a sports bar 2 blocks down that might be more your vibe." The man's eyes rested on Dylan, and for the first time there was a flicker of something heavy behind them. Not anger, not exactly. It was disappointment. The kind that comes from seeing the same scene play out too many times. "I'm not here for the bar," the man said gently. "I just wanted a quiet corner. I don't mind waiting, and I can follow whatever dress code you want next time. I came straight from work." "Yeah, well, straight from work doesn't really cut it here," Dylan replied. "Our guests expect a certain standard, and honestly, your presence is making some of them uncomfortable." That last part was a lie. No one had even noticed the man yet. The only ones watching were me, the busboy wiping down the host stand, and a couple in the corner arguing quietly over their phones. The stranger glanced around the room, taking in the polished marble, the huge abstract painting on the far wall, the discreet cameras near the bar. He looked back at Dylan, and when he spoke, his voice was even softer. "Uncomfortable," he repeated, like he was trying the word on his tongue. "You're sure it's them who are uncomfortable?" Dylan let out a short, sharp laugh. "Look, buddy, I'm trying to spare you the embarrassment. Places like this, they're not exactly built for guys in hoodies, all right? I'm sure you're a good guy, but this is a luxury restaurant. Our cheapest bottle of wine is more than that sweatshirt." I felt my face burn, even though the insult wasn't aimed at me. The busboy shifted uneasily. The stranger just stood there, the insult settling on his shoulders like a weight he refused to carry. Instead of arguing, he gave a tiny nod. "I see," he said. "I didn't come here to cause trouble, if you're sure there's nowhere for me to sit." His voice trailed off, and for a second I thought he really was going to turn around and leave. Something in me panicked. All I could think about was my little brother, sitting cross-legged on our cheap rug, eyes shining as he watched this same man on screen saving people who didn't deserve him, getting back up every time life tried to bury him. "Wait," I blurted. "There's the corner table, the one by the kitchen door. Nobody ever wants it, but it's clean and—" Dylan rounded on me. "I said I've got it, Maria." This time his anger wasn't just in his eyes. It was in his whole body, in the way his jaw clenched and the veins stood out on his neck. I remembered he'd mentioned his rent going up, his tips going down. I knew he was scared, and scared people sometimes turned mean. But that didn't make it easier to watch. "Sir," Dylan said to the stranger without looking away from me, "I'm going to have to ask you to step outside. We can't have you blocking the entrance." There it was, the line that turned an awkward moment into something uglier. The man in the hoodie took a slow breath, and I saw his hands tighten just slightly at his sides, then relax again, choosing calm again and again. "All right," he said, "if that's how it is." He stepped back toward the door, and my chest ached with this strange mix of shame and frustration. A man who had given so many people hope on screen was being treated like a problem because of a hoodie and a quiet voice. I half expected him to snap, to say something cutting, to pull out his phone and ruin Dylan's life in a tweet. Instead, he did the opposite. "I'm sorry if I caused any inconvenience," he said. "I should have called first. That one's on me." Who apologizes for being humiliated? My eyes stung. I gripped my tray tighter, nails digging into the underside of it. Before he could reach the door, a voice cut through the music and the low hum of conversation. "Sir, excuse me, sir." It was Victor, our manager, hurrying out from the back office with a stack of folders in his hands and a Bluetooth headset still in his ear. He was usually composed, every hair in place, tie perfectly straight. Tonight, as he caught sight of the man in the hoodie, the folders slipped right out of his hands and scattered across the floor. "Maria, help me with—" he started, then stopped mid-sentence, all the color draining from his face. His eyes went wide, locked on the stranger. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. The man turned slowly, and their eyes met. For the first time since he'd walked in, his expression shifted into something almost shy, like he'd been caught sneaking into his own birthday party. "Hey, Victor," he said quietly. "Didn't mean to cause a scene." Victor's mouth opened, then closed again. He took 2 hurried steps forward, almost tripping over his own feet. "Mr. Reeves," he whispered, voice cracking. "Sir, what are you? You didn't tell us you were coming tonight." Dylan froze, tray trembling slightly in his hands, his face going from annoyed to confused to horrified in a heartbeat. He looked at Victor, then at the man he'd just called Buddy, then back again, like his brain was refusing the information in front of him. "Wait," Dylan said, his voice suddenly small. "Mr. Reeves, as in Keanu Reeves." The stranger, Keanu, gave a modest half-smile, the kind that never reached his eyes. "That's what my passport says." Victor swallowed hard, then glanced quickly around the room, as if suddenly aware of every camera, every witness, every word that had been spoken. "Sir," he said, his voice a strained whisper, "I am so sorry." We had no idea you'd be visiting your own restaurant tonight." The last word hung there between us. You're, like a dropped glass shattering in slow motion, and every single one of us felt it hit. The word "your" echoed in my head like someone had shouted it into a cathedral. For a second, nobody moved. The clink of glasses, the soft jazz from the speakers, the low conversations, they all seemed to drop away. It was just us at the entrance, a humiliated movie legend in a hoodie, a manager about to faint, a waiter who wished he could rewind the last 5 minutes, and me clutching an empty tray like a shield. Keanu bent down without a word and started helping Victor gather the scattered folders from the floor. That simple act, this world-famous actor kneeling on polished marble to pick up someone else's mess, hit me harder than any dramatic speech could. His fingers were steady, his movements quiet, like he was used to making himself smaller so other people could breathe. "Please, Mr. Reeves, don't," Victor stammered, scrambling to kneel too, papers slipping from his shaking hands. "It's okay," Keanu said gently, stacking the folders into a neat pile and handing them over. "It's your restaurant too, at least for tonight." From the corner of my eye, I saw a woman at table 6 do a double take, her fork hovering midair. A man at the bar muttered, "Is that?" And suddenly every pair of eyes in the room seemed to snap toward us. Phones started to appear, some quickly, some guiltily, like people knew they were crossing a line and couldn't help themselves. Dylan still hadn't moved. His jaw worked like he was trying to chew words he couldn't swallow. When he finally spoke, his voice was hoarse. Mr. Reeves, I didn't know it was you," he blurted. "If I had known, That's kind of the point, isn't it?" Keanu replied, still calm, still quiet. He straightened, hands sliding into the pockets of his hoodie. There was no anger in his eyes, but there was weight. "You treated me exactly how you thought I deserved to be treated, without knowing anything about me. That's honest. I appreciate honest." Dylan's face flushed a deep, awful red. He glanced around, realizing the entire restaurant was watching. Some of the regulars were smirking a little, enjoying the show. Others looked uncomfortable, guilty even. Maybe they were remembering their own moments of judging someone too quickly. "I was just following policy," Dylan said quickly, clinging to the excuse like a life raft. "We have a dress code and a reservation system, and—" "Policy didn't force you to laugh at him," I said before I could stop myself. The words slipped out, sharp and shaking. Dylan's head snapped toward me, his eyes flashing with a mixture of betrayal and panic. Victor shot me a warning look so fast I almost missed it. I knew that look. It said, "You're disposable, he's not." But Keanu turned to me instead, and something in his face softened. "You tried to help," he said. "Thank you for that." My throat tightened. Nobody ever thanked me for anything here, not really. They tipped or they didn't. They complained or they didn't. Being seen felt almost dangerous. Victor cleared his throat, trying to take control back. "Mr. Reeves, I assure you this is not how we usually treat our guests. Dylan is one of our best servers. We will take immediate disciplinary." "I don't want anyone fired," Keanu interrupted, his tone still gentle but firm enough to stop Victor mid-sentence. "Not tonight." Dylan blinked, surprise flickering over his face. I did too. I'd been bracing myself for an explosion, for someone to get dragged into the office and never come back out. That would have been easier in a way, clean, simple, like a movie where the bad guy gets what he deserves in the third act. But real life, I was starting to realize, belonged to a man in a hoodie who refused to play that script. "If I came here announced in a suit with a reservation under my name," Keanu continued, "you'd roll out the red carpet, you'd memorize my order, you'd be charming. That's not what I need to see." He let his gaze travel slowly across the room. Some guests looked away. Others held his stare with a mixture of awe and discomfort. "I invested in this place because I thought it could be different," he said softly. "Good food, yes, nice atmosphere, sure, but also respect, for everyone, not just the people in $1,000 watches." The busboy by the host's stand looked like he might cry. I knew the feeling. "I came in like this on purpose," Keanu added, tapping his hoodie with 2 fingers. "No assistant, no reservation. I wanted to know how someone walking in off the street would be treated in a restaurant that has my name on the paperwork. Tonight, I found out." No one said a word. Even the music seemed too loud now, like it didn't belong in the same room as what was happening. Dylan swallowed. "I'm sorry," he said, and this time it sounded real, not slick, not calculated, just scared and raw. I misjudged you. I've just had a rough week, and the tips have been bad, and my head's not in the right place, and—" "We've all had rough weeks," Keanu said quietly. There was no judgment in it, just experience. "That doesn't give us permission to be cruel." The word cruel made Dylan flinch. I saw his shoulders curl in like he was trying to make himself smaller. For a second, I almost pitied him. Almost. Because I also remembered the way his voice had twisted when he told Keanu to try a sports bar. The way he'd lied about making guests uncomfortable. Victor stepped forward, putting on his firm manager face. "Mr. Reeves, if you'd like, we can move you to the private room upstairs," he offered quickly. "No cameras, no distractions, full privacy. We'll comp your meal, of course, and I'll personally—" "I don't want the private room," Keanu said, cutting him off with the same calm finality. "And I don't want anything comped. I came here to eat, down here with everyone else." He turned his head slightly, eyes finding mine again. "You mentioned a corner table by the kitchen door, didn't you?" I nodded, heartbeat ringing in my ears. "That table's always available," I managed. "Most people hate being that close to the noise." He smiled, just a little. "I spent half my career eating on milk crates between takes, next to generators and cables. I think I'll survive a swinging kitchen door." A few people chuckled softly, the tension in the room shifting but not breaking. "I'd like to sit there," he continued. "If that's okay, the worst table in the house. I want to see the restaurant from the place nobody wants." For a moment, Victor looked like he might argue, then he seemed to think better of it. "Of course, sir," he said. "Anything you prefer." Keanu took a breath, then turned to Dylan. "And I'll keep my original waiter," he added. "You." The word hit Dylan like a slap. "Me." "You had a bad first impression of me," Keanu said. "So let's see who you are when you're trying to do it right, if you're still willing." Everyone waited for Dylan to protest, to make an excuse to run. Instead, he nodded slowly, shame and fear warring on his face. "Yes, sir," he said. I'll do my best." "Good," Keanu replied. "And he pointed to me, she's your backup. If you get overwhelmed, you ask her for help. She stepped in when you didn't. I want her in the room." My heart lurched. I wasn't supposed to touch celebrity tables. That was the unspoken rule. But the owner, had just rearranged the rules like they were nothing more than place settings. Victor opened his mouth as if to object, then closed it again. Customers were still staring. Phones were still out. This wasn't just a scene anymore. It was a story, spreading with every whisper and every recording. Keanu shifted his attention back to me. "What's your name?" he asked. "Maria," I said, trying not to sound like I was about to forget how to breathe. "Nice to meet you, Maria," he said. "Will you walk me to my table?" So I did. I led Keanu Reeves past guests who suddenly sat up straighter, past tables that usually ignored me, past a bar where the bartender pretended not to stare. The corner table by the kitchen door waited, half in shadow, half in fluorescent spill from the back. The table no one wanted. Tonight it was the center of the universe. He sat down with the same unhurried grace he'd had while picking papers up off the floor. I placed a menu in front of him with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. "If I can recommend something," I started, then stopped, realizing how ridiculous that sounded. Recommend food to the man who owned the kitchen. He seemed to read my mind and smiled. "Go ahead," he said. "Tonight I'm not the boss. I'm just a guy in a hoodie who got lucky enough to get a table." I swallowed. "The mushroom risotto," I said, "and the roasted chicken. They're honest, not trying too hard, just good." His eyes warmed at that. "Honest sounds perfect," he said. "I'll take both, and some water, tap is fine." Of course it was. I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me. "Maria." "Yes." "When you bring the food," he said, his tone shifting to something quieter, more serious, "bring me a copy of the staff schedule too, and a napkin and a pen." My chest tightened. "The schedule." He nodded. "And while I eat, I'd like you to think about something. When you come back, I want an honest answer." My fingers tightened around my notepad. Okay, about what? He looked past me toward the dining room, where Dylan stood frozen in place, where Victor was pretending everything was normal, where guests were trying to act like they weren't desperate to hear every word. "About this place," he said softly. "About what really happens here when I'm not looking, and whether you actually feel safe working in a restaurant with my name on the lease." The kitchen door swung open behind me, filling the air with the hiss of steam and the clang of pans. For the first time since I'd started at Sable and Stone, I realized the ground under my feet was not as solid as I'd thought. My next words could change everything. I nodded slowly, clutching my empty tray like it might keep me from floating away, and walked toward the kitchen, feeling every step lead me closer to a truth I wasn't sure I was brave enough to say out loud.